Saintess summons skeletons. By Morn. Chapter 71, Again and Again. Alith and Sofia looked around. They had destroyed a lot during their previous leveling session. The outer ring's upper city was full of holes, and a good part of the lower city was nothing but debris. Many an angel's bolt had been thrown. There was no sign of a single Phagiad anywhere, but that had always been the case, since their whole thing was hiding in plain sight. Maybe they disappeared so the dungeon did as well? She shared that thought with Alith. The lower city should be full of them, send Parith to check. All right, Sofia answered. The chicken followed her command and hopped its way down to the ground level of the chaotic city. It explored a bit, Sofia monitoring everything using the shared vision. She had him check inside multiple houses, enter towers, and run around in the alleyways. She had Parith teleport back to them. This recall function of his was really practical. Sofia was only sad it didn't work both ways. Nothing, she told Alith. They're not here. Even if they all disappeared, didn't you say for a dungeon to be cleared the boss needed to die? Did we kill it without knowing last time? Alith wondered as she kept observing the lower city. Oh, can you fly here by the way? I still cannot transform. Mana density is normal, if a bit on the low side, so I don't see why not, Sofia said, spreading her wings wide and floating up a bit. Flying between the houses would be hard, but going above shouldn't be a problem. I'm a bit worried about the black sky thing. In fact, she found the place quite unnerving before, and the knowledge of the Alphagiad's existence did nothing to help with that. Can you fly to the top of the walls? Let's check what's beyond there. The wall leading outside the city wasn't quite as tall as the inner city wall, so they went up this one first. Now, Sofia was really glad that Alith wasn't taller, because her wings weren't that strong. And it was weird enough to carry her like that. Flying over the last row of ice blue bricks, she landed on the walkway of the wall that was in fact more like a huge rampart. The walkway was very large, enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Beyond the parapets overlooking the outside. Nothing. The sky was the same dark abyss it had always been here, it extended to the horizon and then down. There was nothing else, as though the world stopped at the wall's base. Sofia started flying over the parapet before making a sharp turn back with a flap of her ethereal wings. There was no mana outside. I almost fell off. She landed on the walkway again and tried to calm her heart. That scared the shit out of me. Can't fly there? You good? Alith asked with a hand on Sofia's shoulder. Yes to both. Sofia took some more time to calm down. There's nothing at all beyond the wall. Not even mana. I'm curious what's under the city, Alith said, bending over the edge to look down. She spoke again, but it made no sound. Frowning, she stepped back. Looks like nothing either, no dirt or anything, just bricks then nothing. I think it goes a bit further down than the lower streets level though. Hard to tell. Your mouth is steaming, Sofia pointed out with a raised finger. Alith, who hadn't paid attention, closed her mouth and swallowed. Weird, she finally said, before brushing it under the rug. Anyway, let's check the inner city, since there's nothing here. She raised her arms. Please help, Lady Saint, this poor banshee has no flight. Carrying Alith, Sofia tried to fly up, but at first they couldn't go much higher before the mana disappeared. The more they approached the inner wall, the higher they could go. So there's some kind of dome above holding the mana. Or it could be a sphere surrounding the city, that's still possible. They landed on the wall to the inner city. You have entered the dungeon, Zangdar Inner Ring, LV 200+. Sofia looked down at the inner city. It had nothing in common with the chaos of the outer ring. There were 12 mansions in a circle against the wall, and some sort of huge vaguely cone-shaped palace tower thing in the middle. The whole thing looked oddly like a big clock. The mansions had suffered the same fate as the outer city, stripped clean of doors, furniture, or anything that wasn't made of the same blue rocks. But the palace seemed actually safe. They could see actual wooden doors, glass windows, curtains. Maybe it's protected by some kind of barrier? My guess at this point is the Phagiids eat anything that isn't blue stone, so the palace could be a real safe space. If we can take it over, we could have an ultra-secure permanent secret base, away from everything. Well, it's just sad that we only have one ring. Alith looked at Sofia. Do we return to the desert? Worm should be gone by now. Not too sure about fighting level 200 Phagiids. Imagine if they have ranged attacks, we'd be in trouble, even with your wings. Weird to see you be the voice of reason after you wanted to explore the desert's level 200 dungeon. It's exactly because I explored it that I know it's too much for us to take on. At least the desert dungeon I could scout in advance. Here. Sofia sat down on the rampart's walkway, with Perith on her lap. I agree that we should leave. Anyway, you should go out first, since you can always transform to escape the worm if it's still there. I'll wait until you're back. Okay, I'll be right back, Alith answered, starting to carve the ritual circle onto the ground with her mithril-coated weapons. She stood in the center of the circle and sent a mana pulse to the ring. Then again. And again. She looked back at Sofia with a pained smile. Say, Sof. You wouldn't happen to have a secret technique to teleport us back? We're stuck here. We're stuck here. Did the ring break somehow? No clue. Here, identify it maybe, could tell us what's wrong, Alith said, tossing her the ring. Kiring of Zangdar, through the plains, Mana shall lead the way. The locked city is but a shadow of its past glory, long destroyed by what it was meant to keep away. Uses left, 0/256 item level, 0 grade, forgotten. So now it shows the uses left. Great. She shared the message with Alith. Surely we'll find another Kiring, she started, only to be met with Sofia's shaking head. Alith, if we find another ring and the coordinates of our world are saved in this one, where do you think a new one would lead us? Oh. Maybe we can repair this one somehow? She didn't even believe in her own ideas. Am I stuck here forever? Sofia deactivated the bone armor and let herself fall back and lay on the ice blue floor. Why does this shit always happen to me? She counted on her fingers, first the cavern, the basement, the slavers, the monster tide, the caravan, the orphanage, the church, the princess room in the trial, the pyramid, now this. Can I not be free, ever? She rolled over to plant her face on the ground. I'm tired, Alith. Whoa, this is quite unlike you. Alith approached from behind to pat her back. You know what all these things you talk about have in common, Sofia? You made it out. And I'm here now. What's one more time? We'll be out before we know it. Come on, stand up now, she coaxed Sofia gently. This place isn't going to explore itself. Surely we'll find a way in the palace, or when we kill the boss. Saria is waiting for me. Sofia mumbled in distress on the ground. Her voice was so weak and discouraged, Alith didn't even understand what she said. It was only when even Perith had started pecking at her face to get her up that Sofia accepted to stop pretending to be a rug. Since when can Perith make decisions by himself? This was the first time ever that Perith had done something she had never ordered him to do. Even rescuing and carrying her when she had passed out from the poison gas in this very same city before had all been part of the orders she had once given. But pecking her face? She had never ordered him to do anything remotely close to that. Some specialization options had mentioned becoming intelligent, so likely conscious, but Eclipse Skeleton said nothing about such an option. Did it? Wait. Am I blind? As she looked up at the specialization option message, one line she had glossed over before stood out like a sore thumb. This skill's summon is willing to protect the summoner at any cost. Chapter 72, Identities. She read the line a few more times. This skill's summon is willing to protect the summoner at any cost. Willing. Since when? From the start. No, no way. It was absolutely brainless at the beginning. The level 70 upgrade. LV.70, Parith can now understand complex commands. So all this time in the armor, then on the boat. She stared at the skeletal chicken that also looked straight at her, like it did most of the time. Waiting for an order. Sofia spoke without giving an actual skill-driven order, jump twice if you understand what I'm saying. But the chicken didn't move. It only kept staring at her, occasionally tilting its head. Like a chicken. Not quite there yet, she mumbled. She didn't know if she was disappointed or relieved. Probably both. At least now she could use her own wings to get bones for her armor instead of dismantling Parith every time. Though it's not like he can feel pain. Right? You're feeling better? I've a few ideas to share. Yes. Sorry about that, Alith, these last few months have been hard. Don't worry about it, Sof. As long as you stand back up. Thank you. Did you know Parith is starting to become a bit sentient? Sofia asked, scooping up the chicken skeleton with both hands. Starting? Poor girl, you've never seen how fervently he guards you when you sleep. What? What they? Sofia looked back and forth at Alith and the skeleton. Alith shrugged it off, anyway, these ideas of mine. Alith's mind hadn't been idle for the half-hour or so Sofia had spent motionless on the ground. Her very first suggestion was a way for Sofia to find food, cannibalism. Usually healing magic would expand the energy of the person being healed to repair the wounds, which made eating your own flesh and then healing yourself completely useless in terms of nutrition. But in the case of Alith, she didn't need to eat. Her nature as an undead meant she could survive and be healed up purely with mana. So Sofia could enjoy fresh Alith meat for as long as she wanted. Granted it was weird, but better than starving to death. And for water? Blood. After all, summon blood gave them an infinite supply. They weren't so sure if drinking blood was completely fine for a human, but if they could eat raw meat. Despite the source of the meat volunteering it by herself, Sofia wasn't too excited by the idea. Though she accepted to do it as a last resort, if she was really going to starve. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Then Alith explained her second plan. My other idea is to train up your skills a bit before going. The only ones of mine I can still level up by myself are planar shift and botany, so we don't really care about those now. But we should at least level up sanctity a bit. So here's the plan. Alith's training program was a very involved one, whereby she would continuously cut off Sofia's wings, training sanctity. Then Sofia would heal them up with heal undead, leveling that too. And of course, Sofia would spend the whole time not falling while standing on the very edge of the wall's parapets, to try giving some love to Way of the Fool that was also still criminally underleveled for some reason. Shenanigans used to level up by itself. Well, it took more than a decade to reach level 48, so it only makes sense that the upgraded version is harder to level. And Identify is stuck at level 1. Leveling Sanctity and Heal Undead would make their whole group harder to kill, so in a situation like this, they really needed it. And it would also work to fill up Sofia's now gigantic bone storage space, which could hold up to 10 tons of bones. They would have to cut a lot of wings to get there. Before we start, Alith said while twirling her blades, one last thing. She slashed at the blue crystal parapets, carving out half a brick in a single swing. She caught it, and weighed it in her hand before handing it to Sofia. Identify this, maybe we can learn more about the Phagids. You said the Alpha was made of the same stuff, right? The chunk of brick was not unlike all the debris they had created when Sofia used to bombard the place with lightning bolts, rigid crystalline stuff, with a mass more akin to wood than stone. It didn't scratch or break easily, even if it couldn't withstand the Angel's Bolt or the Mithril Blades. It was quite tough. Midenicite, a crystalline mineral with the unique property of being completely unable to retain any mana. Item level, 0 grade, valuable. Interesting property, Kind of like mithril, though mithril is more like mana repulsion if I understand it correctly. Alith looked at the keyring. Isn't it made out of that stuff? It had mana though. There's probably something else inside, who knows, I don't know anything about that stuff, maybe we can ask Carlson. Oh well, guess we're back to Drakran after this. That and investigating that vanished capital city of yours. Alright then, stand on the edge and show your wings. It's time to level up. I'm very happy that my wings can't feel pain. It didn't take long for Sofia and Alith to get in a good rhythm and start filling up the armor of bones storage space. Cutting wings, healing them. The skill levels came fast at the start, then it slowed down before stopping to a halt. They continued until the storage was full anyway. Heal Undead reached level 57. Heal Undead reached level 64. Sanctity reached level 2. Sanctity reached level 24. Way of the Fool reached level 4. Armor of Bones, gather and reform bones to create a blessed bone armor protecting the Saintess. The armor can store up to 10,000 kg, 100 * skill level, of bones to repair itself in combat. Protective strength goes up every level. Stocked bones, 999.6 kilograms. A good harvest. That took so long. Sofia sat down against the parapet. How are you still so energetic after doing that for hours? More stamina? I just don't mind repetitive things as long as they benefit me. You're always so quick to want to do new things though? Like how you forced me to come here the first time. What I dread most is doing nothing. We're exploring next? How about a stroll through the outer ring? More than a stroll, it was accurate to say that they flew around the place. They searched for traces of the Phagiad, but they didn't find any. However, they made a few discoveries. Firstly was the massive Middenisset gate linking the outer and inner city, as well as a gate leading to the void outside. They were both still closed. Another point of interest was a hole, which looked like a byproduct of Sofia's angel's bolting of the lower street, that opened a path from the outer to the inner city. Maybe all the Phagiads went through there. And lastly was a large church-like building, hidden in the chaos of the street level, in which they found an orb-shaped item the size of a fist on the ground near a crystal pedestal. Middenisset Catalyst, a masterfully crafted spell catalyst made of gold and Middenisset. Enhances the speed of mana projectiles by up to 20%. Item level, 80. Grade, Forgotten. Restriction, only applies to instant projectile spells cast through the catalyst core. The only compatible skill they had with it was Summon Blood. They debated whether to sell it or to keep it for later if Sofia managed to make a decent skill for it. They could only keep it for now anyway, so in the necklace it went. Also it's weird how it says spells instead of skills. That had to be the magic item required for the place to count as a dungeon. Perhaps the boss had been there too. Sofia had a solid theory about the Phagiads by now, well, an idea at least. Because the Phagiads looked like the crystal that cannot hold mana, her guess was that they were bad at it too. If they couldn't hold or take mana from the air, obviously they would have to eat it. Her thought was that the Phagiads ate everything they could find that wasn't made of Middenisset. This singular thing escaped their hunger. Because unlike other elements, it couldn't hold mana. That would explain why everything here was so empty, and why the Alphagiad had tried to stuff his baby with humans. After all, they held much more mana than the natural elements around them. If the Alpha was any indication, they needed that mana to reproduce. Or I have it all wrong and the Alphagiads are carnivorous. Wouldn't explain why everything here's missing except the walls though. Especially seeing how the palace looks intact. It has to be protected from them in some way. Being done with the outer city, they decided to send Perith scout the inner city. If there were monsters like the earth golems from the desert dungeon here, they needed to know. Perith would first check the palace, as it might be the safer place. And next would be the mansions, which Sofia guessed had to house all the Phagiads that used to be in the outer city, if they were still alive. Because where else could they be? Chapter 73, Make It Rain. Sofia let Perith slide down the wall, leaving behind small trails with his claws. Sofia and Alith would observe from a safe distance. The chicken skeleton was in serious combat mode, wearing his halo, an armor of light and his weapon of light that had been morphed to chicken claws of light. If there was ever a dangerous chicken in the history of chickens, it was this one. It touched ground on the paved road, between two mansions. Perhaps there had been gardens around the mansions originally, now those were nothing but 5 or 6 meters deep pits. Same thing for any fences that might have existed before, it was long gone. Could the lesser Phagiids even get in the mansions? Now that I think about it, they weren't good with stairs. There's no way they could climb their way into the mansions. Where the hell have they gone then? The palace? The skeleton flitted away on the straight road going straight for the palace. He got quite close until he ran into an invisible wall. So that explains why the palace has been preserved. One more point to my mana-eater Phagiids theory. Alith also had something to say about it. Think someone lives in there. And they wouldn't have come out when we were busy destroying the outer city? I'd be more inclined to say whoever locked themselves in there is long dead, just like the elf who had the ring. Only one way to find out. Perith attacked the invisible barrier, the zone near the impact rippled with blue light. That was it. It gave a few more attacks with the same result, the barrier was still there, invisible and undamaged. Maybe you should just bolt it. That would be our last resort, I guess. Your mithril blades might work too? It would be nice if we could just get through without breaking it, if it can keep the Phagiids away. To the mansions then, I'd like a simultaneous description if you can please. Sure. Sofia ordered Perith to enter one of the mansions. The skeleton ran there, jumped over the garden pit and entered through a window on the ground floor. Then Sofia entered her narrator mode, empty, as usual, larger rooms than the outer city though. It's not unlike a regular human mansion. I think. No traces of any Phagiid yet. Entering the second floor through the main stairs. Still not much, smaller rooms, long corridors, all desperately empty. There's round holes in some walls and floors, maybe they had water pipes or something like that. Alith interrupted her, water pipes. I thought the nobles of your world had that like ours? It's all in the name, pipes that bring fresh water to like cook and stuff. With servants pumping the water to fill the reserve every day. It's the middle option for those not quite rich enough to get magic water taps but still rich enough for luxury. Most people only have their toilet with piping like that to prevent the smell. Did you not pay any attention when we were at the inn in Drakran? I don't spend much of my time marveling at toilets, no. Anyway. Entering the third floor. Shit. All Alith could pick up was the sound of things breaking in the distance, before Perith, half smashed to smithereens, appeared near Sofia and started regrowing from heel undead. Phagiid. Yes, and a big one. It was alone, latching on a large glowing sphere of the blue stuff. She took out the catalyst, kinda like this but more than your height. Didn't look like a wall but more like a squid? Your world has squids, right? Imagine a 3-meter tall one. You mean the disgusting transparent red thing with a ton of tentacles and a long tube head? I've seen that once or twice. A friend of mine used to transport fish for the nobles, showed me a lot of horrendous stuff. Your world's squids have more than 3 tentacles? But yes, it's somewhat like that, except twice my size, only 3 tentacles, and looking like it's carved out of the blue crystal. Its tentacles can stretch a lot. They reached through the whole empty floor to slam Perith. He blocked a hit with one of his new skills, flying shields of light, and then a second tentacle moved and you see how it ended, so I had him teleport back. Do the glowing orbs not have a mana flow you can detect? This place is so empty of mana I wasn't really paying attention to the skill. I can't see the mana unless it's very obvious or I really focus. Let's see then. So. Alith pressed her. I don't see the orbs. But almost. The orbs are linked to the palace, I can see it if I really focus on where the orb Perith just found is. It's subtle. And, Sofia looked around the whole inner city, I think every mansion has one. Alith only thought about the situation for 5 seconds, so we blow the whole place up, and when all the orbs are down, the palace's shield probably goes down as well. Easy enough. Let us get to work, human trebuchet. Trebuchet. So you're the one asking questions now? It's a long-distance wall destroyer. Fits you just right. Just sending an angel's bolt seemed like an easy enough solution, but they felt it might be risky. If the thing survived, it could spell trouble. They had no idea of the level of the crystal squid. And as far as they knew, there was probably at least one of those in every other mansion. It would be best not to alert the others. There was some hope, however, that they might be safe from the top of the wall, as those things hadn't climbed over to get them back when they rampaged through the outer city. That might mean they couldn't climb. Sofia could also fly, but she couldn't go very high up due to the void outside, and they feared the tentacles might be able to reach her from the ground. So their plan was to take this squid out as quietly as they could, and learn from it to clear the rest. Before that, they had Perith check every mansion's 3rd floor from afar through the windows. As they feared, every mansion had its own orb and phagiid squid. Besides one that had 2 squids. These phagiid squids weren't all the same size, different levels guaranteed, so they decided to hunt the smallest of the bunch first. They would try to do it as quietly and cleanly as possible. If all went to shit, they would turn back to the fly around and blast everything with lightning plan, in which Alith and Perith would have to fend for themselves on the ground. Because they couldn't stay near the forming angel's bolt s. Looking over the mansion occupied by the weakest looking phagiid, they were about to start the attack. Only one detail was posing problems. They didn't know how to get the thing to come out of the house. They had a lot of ideas they wanted to try out, but as it was, they knew too little about their enemy to be sure of the best approach. One thing was certain, they wanted to have access to Sofia's heal undead, so they didn't want to fight inside the mansion. Will it even come out though? The other one didn't move after you teleport Perith away. Who knows, let's try our ideas one by one. If the phagiid went out of their way to eat mana-rich items and people, as Sofia theorized, then they might be able to make it come out, maybe even lure it into a trap. But they could be wrong, and the thing also looked like it was protecting the big sphere. Maybe it's trying to eat the sphere too? Wouldn't that mean they've all been trying and failing at that for centuries? Unless time flows differently here. Or the city wasn't like that when the elf owned the ring. Whatever, time for action. Sofia deployed her wings, the holy light lit up around the white bones, and she took flight. Hovering as far as she could from the windows on the top floor of the mansion, she summoned some blood inside. It was instantly answered with the sound of something heavy slamming against the midanicite floor. Sofia couldn't see, but some part of it had to have crumbled. It attacked the blood? If we can make it destroy the ceiling like that, then we could fight it in there. Sofia flew higher up, as high as she could and over the mansion, then she summoned some blood mid-air. It fell and landed on the roof right above the creature. No reaction this time. I guess since this crystal cannot hold mana, it must insulate from it pretty well. It also can't see it and probably not hear it. That means the phagiid squids from the other mansions shouldn't be too reactive to us fighting this one. If they have a similarly limited perception, that's good news. The next test was to do the same things with big chunks of crystal instead, to see if that was enough to prompt a reaction. Chapter 74, Chopping Blocks. That's also a way I could use to attack, dropping things from very high. Sofia dropped the debris of crystal bricks on the roof. The chunks of midanicite collided with the roof in a heavy crash. This time the reaction was instantaneous. A stretchy tentacle that still somehow looked like it was carved out of blue stone pierced the roof from the inside. Who could tell what had happened to the crystal chunks? All that was certain was that you didn't want to be at the end of these tentacles. They had effortlessly smashed through the roof and even extended tens of meters beyond that before retracting back into the mansion. We can have the Phagiid collapse the whole roof on itself if it reacts like that every time. Who knows whether that would actually hurt it though? Despite the pestering thus far, the monster was still perched on its crystal sphere. So it most likely won't move unless we really attack it. And the tentacles have a reach of at least 40 meters in all directions. That means I can fly high enough to be safe, if they can't attack further than that. If they climb the walls, it's another story. Maybe we could lure it out with a magic item. Nothing I can afford to risk losing, so guess not. Sofia flew back up to Alith. They had a few ways they could approach this. They ended up going with a rather straightforward approach. Sofia softly landed on the roof, holding Alith, who jumped out of her grasp without a sound. Sofia didn't move and activated her armor. Perith was on standby on the stairs leading to the Phagiid's floor, and Alith was standing on the roof's edge, right above one of the third floor's windows. Her hidden presence skill was finally being useful, coupled with Shinobi she had a double stealth buff. The only problem was that they didn't know how the monster perceived things, since they couldn't see any eyes, but their tests did hint that hearing was at least one of its capacities. Hence their emphasis on being silent. Alith gave the okay from her position. It's time. Sofia used Graveyard of the Righteous. They had tried and activating it on a different floor above or below worked fine as long as it was in the skill's range around her. Out of nowhere on the third floor of the mansion that had only been occupied by the monster and its sphere, dozens of gravestones rose. Curiously enough, they were all made of midenicite. The Phagiid didn't take kindly to this invasion of its space. The three tentacles lashed out one by one in a rhythmic cadence, destroying a gravestone each time. A tentacle can only attack once a second. Letting the skill run its course, as the skeletons started to pop out from the ground, she summoned balls of blood one by one. They crashed on the floor, attracting the monster's attention on yet another target. This was the time for Perith to shine. The chicken skeleton rushed out of the stairs, dashing straight for the busy Phagiid. He used chains of the four seals, summoning 4 chains of light, all latching to a single tentacle, the one closer to the window that Alith stood above. The monster tugged on the chains, one broke straight away but the others held. It lashed at Perith with another free tentacle that had just smashed a blood ball. By the time the tentacle reached him, he had disappeared from this floor and reappeared on the roof next to Sofia, then rushed to latch onto Alith's back. Sofia flew back up a bit to be safe and controlled the skeletons from a distance. A few skeletons' upper bodies from the graveyard skill had had time to emerge from the ground and latch onto the third tentacle during this time. Alith finally made her entry through the empty hole of a window. She was close to the monster before it could react. While the tentacle that was held down by Perith's chains broke its second tether, Alith landed on it near the base. She had to be on it since she was too short to reach it from the ground as the monster was still on the sphere that was higher than her. Straddling the tentacle, she attacked the appendage's base as fast as she could, her mithril blades flashing around. The tentacle she was on kept moving, the third chain broke, then the fourth, and the tentacle's tip did a U-turn to stab Alith from the back. Only to be met with Perith's flying shields of light and a few hits from his talons. The second tentacle was completely overwhelmed by the skeletons that had managed to bury a quarter of its unstretched length into the solid midenicite floor. The tip of this tentacle was now emerging on the lower floor that teemed with even more half-skeletons. The third tentacle was busy trying to destroy all the skeletons and free the second, but it could only do so much, and they kept reforming after it smashed them. Sofia found it mesmerizing how the graveyard skeletons could phase in and out of the solid floor and bring the tentacle with them. Though they were skeletons, calling them floor ghosts wouldn't be wrong. There had to be at least 50 skeletons holding the tentacle and they barely managed to pin it down. Sofia did her best to try spreading the skeletons wherever the free tentacle attacked them to mitigate the damage. They were quite sturdy inside Perith's sanctified grounds, but even then they couldn't survive a single direct hit. Under the sustained attacks from Alith's mithril commas, and with air of fire's damage bonus stacking up, the first tentacle was severed. White blood sprayed all over Alith, stopped near her skin by Doppel's invisible armor. The second tentacle instantly changed target, swishing toward Alith like a terrifying stone whip. Perith that had gone back to Alith jumped up and used gravity well, the tentacle affected by a strong pulling force shifting its trajectory towards Perith. It was too fast for him to finish using his teleport, he got hit before disappearing. That was 80% of his life. Remnants of a chicken carcass appeared in the air near Sofia, it was engulfed in a ray of healing light coming from above. Perith's life was high enough by the time he landed on the roof again and rushed in through the first hole the squid had made during their previous tests. During the time that the free tentacle spent attacking Alith, the graveyard skeletons buried another quarter of their assigned tentacle. Perith ran straight to the Phagiad, launching an attack with his holy light-coated talons. It scratched the giant squid's skin a few times, drawing some trickle of white blood. The free tentacle turned on him. That was Alith's opportunity to jump out of the window. Sofia caught her mid-air and flew her right down into the second floor through a window on another side of the mansion. That led them to the room full of graveyard skeletons holding for dear life on half a tentacle that kept twitching and stretching around to free itself. It had been more than 3 seconds, so Alith's air of fire's stacks had expired. It would take a few seconds to build them back up and chop off this tentacle in 2 halves. Sofia flew back up, she had to be above the roof to heal Perith if need be. Now that Perith was near the squid's body, dodging the tentacle was easier as he could turn around the monster, forcing it to be very precise with its attacks, lest it hits itself. When Alith started attacking the tentacle on the floor below, the tentacle shifted to slamming the floor to free the other. It slammed down indiscriminately, only trying to destroy everything. Each hit was a new tentacle-shaped hole through the floor. Sofia was still micromanaging the skeletons, she observed the situation through Perith's eyes, at this rate the whole third floor might collapse. Meanwhile Perith was free to attack as much as he could, focusing on the main body. Sofia's mana hit the halfway mark. The tentacle slammed into the floor again. Opening a large hole, through the projected debris and dust, it lunged at Alith, who dodged with a twirl, jumping out of the window again. Sofia wasn't here to catch her this time, so she softened her landing with the slow fall ring. It was hers now that Sofia had wings. Breaking her last bit of momentum with a roll, Alith jumped straight back up. Stepping on a balcony and then a windowsill, she reached the third floor again. Now both remaining tentacles were free, though one had a few straggler skeletons still clutching it. Sofia was reforming skeletons as fast as she could. The skill could be managed with a lot more depth than the description suggested, and things like investing more mana to rebuild the half-skeletons faster could be done. This time she would spread them equally to both tentacles. Alith reached the squid, sidestepping a slam and a pierce from the 2 tentacles. By now the monster had completely given up attacking Perith. Perhaps his damage was irrelevant. Alith did her best to attack the tentacle she had already damaged. Since she had time to build up some momentum with avoidance this time, she managed to land a few hits. Then the Phagiad managed to riposte with its other limb. The whip-like tentacle hit her, bursting through Doppel's invisible armor without slowing. The clean hit went straight through her. It pulverized her body from the navel to the knees in an explosion of blood and gore. Paralyzed by the pain, she couldn't even scream. Chapter 75, What's Under? Were it not for the skeletons weighing the tentacle down, it might have blasted Alith's head instead of her waist. Even her undead body wouldn't have saved her from such a blow. She could do nothing as her upper body fell, grasped by gravity. She still had both her arms, but that would do little for her. The second tentacle was coming in for a pierce, she wouldn't even have time to hit the floor. Sofia was panicking, she couldn't heal Alith because of the roof. But Perith was still there. He still had greater heal. Sofia felt Perith's mana drop to almost 0. Greater heal, instantly heal a target to full HP costs, 100 * targets class level /2, mana. 24 hours cooldown. Causes a heavy strain on the target's soul. Alith's body grew back explosively, but she was still under the shock. Your skill! Doppel screamed. Out of her stupor, Alith barely managed to move enough to activate, utterly unimpressed before the tentacle reached her. Even with the 50% damage reduction, the tentacle still broke through Doppel's defenses and pierced a hole through Alith's torso, right below her neck. But it failed to go any further. This tentacle was the one that she had been attacking all this while, and it was already quite weakened. Alith struck with both her weapons. The tentacle's tip that had penetrated her flesh was severed from the damaged tentacle. The monster pulled back its limb. It was going to attack again with the other one. The skeletons had been accumulating on both tentacles, latching on them whenever they neared the ground. It slowed them enough for Alith to escape through a window. Sofia was there to catch and heal her. Perith teleported to them as well. Only the graveyard skeletons were left inside to suffer the Phagiid's ire. Perith and Sofia were both almost out of mana by now. The monster squid still had one fully functional tentacle, and one that was pretty damaged and missing the tip. They wanted to finish the thing off, but they were out of options, so Sofia made the decision to retreat. The hit Alith took had been a close call. They had largely underestimated the strength of the monster. They couldn't afford to take more risks. Let's hope it cannot heal. At least the thing didn't follow them as Sofia flew them back up to their observation spot on the rampart. Much like it did in the battle, the monster didn't move from atop the Midanicid sphere. It's like a bird incubating an egg. Graveyard of the Righteous' effect ended as Sofia left its range, the tombstones and skeletons dissolving into a mist of mana. They had left their backpacks up on the wall. The first thing Alith did was to unpack hers to find and put on a new pair of pants, as her old ones had been destroyed with her. She had taken a fair lot of them from the blue glass factory workers' old clothes, exactly to remedy situations like these. Heal Undead reached level 57. Graveyard of the Righteous reached level 101. Graveyard of the Righteous reached level 102. Graveyard of the Righteous reached level 103. Graveyard of the Righteous reached level 104. Summon Blood reached level 41. Summon Blood reached level 42. Summon Blood reached level 43. Sitting facing one another on each side of the wall, exhausted, they looked at each other. "Are you all right?" Sofia asked. Despite what she had just gone through, Alith looked perfectly fine, in no small part due to her presentable skill, Sofia suspected. "Yeah, I'm good. Perith saved me multiple times in there. I'm feeling a bit queasy, that's all. I'm shocked that this is all that does to you. I saw through Perith. It was gruesome. Quite ironic coming from you. You should know firsthand how it feels burning alive, with all the lightning you've been throwing, so. Do I really need to explain which is worse? I've accepted that this is how this world works. You have a point. Would you go back to your world if you could?" Alith made a weird face, but she only thought for a second. "No." "Well, that's great, because we're locked in here. I'm glad though. Thank you for sticking with me." "Hoi, Sof, are you making your goodbye speech or what? It ain't that bad." No. I'm just saying." "Well. Let's find a way to finish this thing off then. We have a level debt to pay. I have an idea. A start at least." Alith's thinking was that since the Phagiid would attack sound sources of stuff hitting the roof, they could start by making it destroy the whole roof above itself. And then, maybe Sofia could drop stuff directly on the monster. It had a disadvantage in that Sofia would no longer be able to fly close to the mansion since the monster would see her, but at least she would be able to heal Alith and Perith if they went back to fight. That or we give up, you bolt the damn thing, and we pray that it doesn't alert the other Phagiids. That's even more dangerous. Let's see. We have a lot of that blue stuff, and technically unlimited sand, bones, flesh and blood. Maybe we can make something out of that. I don't really see it." They kept debating until Sofia thought of something. "Say Alith, you remember how I told you the Magisterium gave me levels after I pushed him to his death? That means indirect kills still give experience. Yeah, and what if we make the Phagiid fall? Fall where? The thing doesn't even move from its sphere. Well, hear me out. It was the dumbest plan Alith had ever heard. They immediately got to work. The mithril commas were cutting through the blue stone like through butter. Sofia had taken one as well, the only problem was how short the blades were. Down in the mansion's first floor, both girls were busy carving away a large hole in the ground. Since the shape of the weapons was impractical, they had tied them to long wing bones from Sofia's storage, so that these new handles were in line with the blades. At least like this they could cut the ground while standing up. Since the air outside the city was so weird, and it looked like there was nothing under there, it was an interesting bet whether the creature would die if it fell into this weird black void. But worst case, if it didn't die, it would at least get rid of the sphere. And getting rid of the spheres meant likely getting rid of the palace's shield. Their only problem now was carving a hole large enough right under where the monster was. All the while making as little noise as possible. They cycled the work shifts with Perith to get some rest. 1 meter down. 3. 5. They didn't even try to keep track of time. Only slaving away in the hole. This was still better than getting exploded out of reality by the monster's tentacles. So they didn't complain. In the empty city, they had nothing else to do anyway. Realistically, they could have killed the thing by doing the same fight once or twice more. It only had 2 tentacles left after all. But why take so much risk? It was around the 10 meters mark that Alith hit the bottom. She whispered, "We're there. It's really empty under there. I can feel it." She then drew a circle in the ground with her blade. Once completed, the circular piece of blue crystal fell. Without a sound, it fell down. Sofia and Ali looked into the hole. All they could see was the black void, and the falling chunk of Midanisit, that shrank more and more until it disappeared from view. They nodded to each other. Sofia smiled, that was the confirmation that her idea could work. Alith gave her a thumbs up. Now to dig the rest of the hole. One thing they had thought up during this time was to boil down the blood for water. Sofia needed it, raw blood wasn't so good for hydration, it turned out. They had no fire, but Sofia's half-cast lightning was very efficient. They went back to the outer city to do that, to be safe. It was disgusting, but it worked. The evaporated water collected on the ceiling, all she had to do was scrape it off and drink it. It was also good training for summon blood. She dumped most of her mana into it, since she had nothing else to do with it anyway, so the skill that had still been low level was upgrading fast. In the meantime, inspired by Sofia's feats, Alith was also trying hard to make something work that had been haunting her for a while. To her surprise, to some level of success. The void outside the city proved to be a very good place to evacuate the thousands of liters of excess summoned blood. The passage of time was a bit blurry in this city where day and night didn't exist, but after what felt like at least a week, the hole was done. Chicken Perith was the one to give the finishing slashes, dragging the comma around on the floor with his beak. He started falling down into the black void. Sofia and Alith were both curious about what would happen if he fell down, but Perith teleported back, as ordered. They couldn't take the risk. And also he still held the comma. Still silent, they stood around the round gaping hole of their creation in the mansion's floor. The walls were uneven, and just being around it was scary. Surely this time. We're killing that squid. Chapter 76, At Home. Going to the second floor was quite a bit more dangerous. This time, only Alith would go and finalize the trap. They hoped that her 2 skills that helped stealth would be enough to not alarm the squid-looking Phagiad. The problem being that there were multiple holes in the second floor ceiling from their previous battle that it could hear or see her through. At least the cutting blue stone part wasn't noisy, the mithril blade slid in there without trouble. There was also a lot less to cut, just enough so that when they baited the squid into a rampage, it would fall without a doubt. Like a ghost, Alith moved through the second floor until she stood right under the monster, and started carving out yet another hole in the floor. It went much faster this time, since she only had to cut through 30 centimeters of the stuff. And what she cut out would fall in the other hole below, so the mess she made cleaned itself. Everything was ready. There was now a single thin layer of ice blue crystal flooring separating the monster and the black void. Everyone got to their position, Sofia on the roof right above the creature, Perith on the edge of the second floor's hole, and Alith hiding behind a wall on the ground level. All right. Now or never. If this doesn't work. Sofia activated her level 43 summon blood. She could now summon the blood in more complex three-dimensional shapes after all her training of the skill. It seemed there were many such skill-altering possibilities that the system would never tell you about. She summoned a ring of blood on the floor around the monster. Its reaction was immediate, like it had done before. It slammed the blood with its tentacles. The floor cracked. It was straight up powdered by the hits in some places. It wasn't long until what had been left crumbled under the weight of the thing and the big crystal sphere it clung onto. The Phagiad fell. It tried to use his undamaged tentacle to spear the third floor's walls, in a bid to stop its fall, the second tentacle wrapping itself tightly around the sphere. Perith, who stood beneath, used gravity well. The collapsing floor sped up towards the hole beneath, attracted by the skill. The monster's tentacle failed to get a solid hit on the far wall, the momentum of its strike broken by the fall. It helplessly fell through the second floor, its tentacle retracting as fast as it could to go for another recovery grab. It was too slow. The monster gave up the sphere, uncoiling his damaged and tipless tentacle. It was falling through the 10 meters hole to the void by the time it was ready to try saving itself a second time. It couldn't miss. The tentacle aimed for the walls of the hole itself, an easy and large target. It could hoist itself from that with its other tentacle afterward. It would be ready soon. An ear-splitting scream resounded through the mansion. The source of the debilitating skill was so close, the Phagiad was stunned for a second. By the time it recovered, it was too late. Its tentacles were too short to reach the city again. It tried, only grasping the underside of the place that had been its prison for an eternity. It fell down the dark void, never to be seen again. The first reaction to this victory was no cry of joy. It was Alith falling to her knees, spewing blood. For the first time ever, she had managed to use Maiden's Shriek in battle. If Sofia was able to get past the restrictions and cast Angel's Bolt from the ground, there was no reason she couldn't use her skill in human form. With the idea in mind, she had tried her hardest to replicate the skill in the outer city when Sofia had been busy training Summon Blood. It was possible since she knew the skill quite well. She had used it many times during their journey from the Scarage dungeon tower to Drakran, just never in battle. At most she had killed a few animals. They had used it a lot to effortlessly catch fish from the river. Since this had been Alith's first exposure to using magic herself, she wouldn't forget the feeling even if she tried to. It had proven quite a challenge to make it work in human form, and she pretty much destroyed her throat and vocal cords every time, but it worked. Alith was puking blood. But she was smiling. Maiden's Shriek, what is more terrifying, the deadly cry of a banshee, or the enraged scream of a young maiden? This is both. Inflicts a status effect to all that hear the sound, excluding yourself. Possible effects are confusion, shock, insanity, and instant death. The base chances for instant death to trigger are 200%, skill level and class level, minus the target's level. If instant death does not trigger, a weaker effect will be inflicted depending on the level difference. May only be cast while in the spiritual plane. Costs 500 mana per use, 5 seconds cooldown. Skill level 100, you may choose to target a single entity instead of everyone that hears you. The effect she managed to inflict was shock. It had only lasted for 2 seconds, but that was enough. Sofia carried Alith outside to heal her. Congratulations on finally using your oldest skill in battle. A great success, right? Sofia rejoiced. Yes, almost didn't believe it, but it worked, both the skill and the hole. I guess we didn't dig all that out for nothing. Right? I wonder if we'll get the experience though, but I can tell you for sure that the shield's link with the sphere is broken. The palace's protection is getting weaker, I see less mana already, she observed, squinting as she observed the conical palace. Does the squinting help you see the mana better? No. Oh. Want my glasses? They're still empty frames. Summon Blood reached level 44. Way of the Fool reached level 5. You have defeated Phagiid larvae, leave 213. Way of the Fool grants bonus experience. You gained a level. Asterisk 12. Remaining debt, 0 levels. Well, that's the debt thing taken care of. Larvae I don't want to meet an adult one then. Can they grow to become an alpha? I hope not. Name, Sofia Afinareth. Age, 20. Class, Saintess. Level, 103. Health, 5515/5515. Stamina, 1452/1515. Mana, 26,552/41,000, minus 10,000, minus 5,000. No new skill either, she asked Alith. Nothing. Alright. Well. Let's dig up a bigger hole. Sofia and Alith had already been trapped there for a while. They had taken some time off to relax, claiming a part of the empty outer city for themselves. By now they had a nice sandbox where they could relax and sleep instead of the hard blue crystal ground, so the cursed pendant's peculiarity was useful for once. They also had some Midanicid furniture, and the antiquities Alith had stolen from the desert dungeon added some life in the drab blue house. They had even carved out a cozy fireplace in the wall. Not that the fireplace was too useful. They did burn blood bricks in there once, made with sand and dried blood from summon blood, but the smell and smoke was really terrible. And it wasn't like they were cold anyway. Alith didn't need to actually drink or eat, so all was good for her. Sofia, on the other hand, had to collect water from the blood. And to eat definitely not Alith's left leg for survival once their packed food ran out. Which had been a bit rough to adapt to. At least the butcher and meat provider herself didn't mind. And as they already knew, Angel's Bolt was great at grilling meat. She just had to be very careful to cancel the skill before it completely charred it, or herself. They also weren't too worried about the threat of the church right now. After all, Cardinal had said the skill's mana needed to reach her for the summon to work. Considering the void this place was in, they didn't believe for a second that anything other than the curing would allow any mana from the outside world to reach them here. They had gained some knowledge of the planes with Alith's skills, Maiden's Shriek and Human Form both mentioned them, and Planar Shift was about them. Since Human Form was explicitly to go from the spiritual realm to the physical and back. Considering she couldn't transform, their best guess was that this was another plane, causing the skill to malfunction. And if there was one place the church certainly couldn't reach them, it had to be there. They dubbed this supposed plane, the empty plane. The reason why it was taking them so much time to kill another squid was because they changed their hunting method. Simply speaking, the same dig-a-hole strategy wouldn't work on a perfectly healthy, 3-tentacled Phagiid larvae, which could easily grapple its way out of there. It had barely worked before, even with Alith's stun, and that had been the badly damaged and lowest level monster. So the way they found was simple. Sink the entire mansions. That way the Phagiids wouldn't even know what came for them. But that meant they had to carve out a trench around the huge mansions instead of a single hole. At least some of their work was cut out by the fact that the previous gardens were already sort of large trenches around the mansions. So they really only had 4 meters of depth to dig through instead of 10. It was still slow, excruciatingly so. But it was safe. Since all the mansions were the same size anyway, their second target was the one housing 2 of the monsters. More experience. Of course they had Perith search through the whole mansion, except the 3rd floor, to be certain they didn't send a potentially important item to the void. But they found nothing in this mansion, and nothing in the one they had cleared before. Maybe in one of the others? They had only dug about 80% of the way around the mansion when something unexpected happened. The ground cracked under their feet. Chapter 77, Diminishing Returns. What blue crystal was left connecting the mansion and the city ground snapped like a twig. Sofia flew out, holding Perith and Alith. The whole thing tilted, due to the unclean break. The other side of the mansion's walls hit the ground as it slid down the hole, producing a thunderous sound. The two Phagiids inside tried to escape through the same window, colliding with each other. You have been affected by instant death. But your skills negated the status. Alith screamed to slow them down. It worked well enough. They froze for a second, as the mansion kept tumbling down into the black abyss below. They couldn't even try to latch to the bottom of the city once they recovered, because the mansion was rotating the other way, making their exit face the void instead. It was good that these things weren't so proficient at moving around. The message informing them of their kill would soon come, but they had a more pressing matter to attend. It was due to the noise of this whole affair. The Phagiid larvae from the nearby mansions were leaving their nest. Sofia saw them pop out from the windows of the mansions directly on the left and on the right. Maybe those further than that were coming out too. She had no time to check. There was no way they could fight two of those. Even less so in an open environment, where a single stretched out tentacle could hit them from far away. With no other choice, she grabbed Alith and followed the falling mansion, flying down the hole. If the thing that keeps mana around the city is a sphere, then there should still be some down there. And that was correct. Flying above an infinite abyss, knowing that at any time you could run into a zone without ambient mana and fall was quite scary. But not as scary as the Phagiid larvae searching for them above. Sofia could still detect where the mana ended if she focused hard enough, but maintaining that while flying and holding onto Alith and Perith was a bit much. So she decided to wait not too far from the hole. They could hear the things move around above, and the strange gravelly sound that their tentacles made as they slithered around. That they were completely silent otherwise was quite unnerving. Even the zombies used to make some sound. Some grunts. But these don't. What are they really? It looks like they're from another world. So how did the Alphagiid come about in the trial? And how did I never hear about any of this before? You would think something that big would be impossible to forget. Well, most of my education came from the church's books. I can't keep going into everything blindly like I did until now. But I need to get stronger fast. I'll think about it if we even manage to get out of here. That the things hadn't known to follow them down the hole meant that whatever they relied on for sensing things other than sound wasn't sight. Sofia already had a big suspicion of that, but this confirmed it. Because the monsters had gotten a clear line of sight to the trio when they left their mansions. They had been waiting in silence for a while, but the things were still moving around on the surface. Screw this, we're going up. I'm getting tired of flying in place. The first option was to go back up the same hole and fly away, hoping that they don't get hit or chased. Pretty bad. They could also try to go around the city from the outside, then fly up the wall, but Sofia was quite scared of flying out of the zone that had mana, even briefly. So they could only search around for their first hole and go up through there. The underside of the city was completely flat. You would think that it would make finding a large hole easy, but it didn't. Because the lighting was uniform and flying lower put them at risk of falling out of the mana sphere. So they could only fly around in circles, as close to the bottom of the city as possible, hoping to find the hole. At least they knew the approximate direction. They finally found the hole and sat down in the mansion that lacked its guard. So, refraining from using Angel's Bolt was a good idea, Sofia started. Alith vigorously nodded. Really, just imagine if you used it and it didn't kill the thing in one try. We'd have at least 3 of those chasing us. You saw how fast they reached us too? They're awkward in their movements but actually very fast once they decide to step down from the spheres. Yet, we're lucky that the first one never wanted to let it go. Hey Sof, actually, isn't this the perfect opportunity to go and break one of those big spheres? Since they're unguarded. Let's check out the level ups first and we'll do that if they're still out. Oh, I'm done with that already. You know what, deal with your things, I'll go outside and check out how many left their places. I'm pretty sure I can go unnoticed, Alith said before jumping out through an empty window. At least she doesn't make a lot of noise. But neither do they. I hope she stays safe. Alright then. You have defeated Phagiid larvae, leave 201. Way of the Fool grants slight bonus experience. You gained a level. Asterisk 6. You have defeated Phagiid larvae, leave 245. Way of the Fool grants slight bonus experience. You gained a level. Asterisk 3. New active skills are available. There were a few things to note. First of all, the bonus experience from Way of the Fool had gone from normal to slight. But also the Phagiid that was way higher level gave a lot less. So either the experience requirements from level 109 to 112 were incredibly increased compared to going from 100 to 109, or the second kill gave way less experience for some reason. Sofia thought the 44 levels of difference between the monsters probably made up for the increased XP requirement. Yet they gained a lot less progress from the second kill, so it had to be that it actually gave less experience. This is the slime farm all over again then. We can only get so much out of killing monsters without taking much risk. Should have seen it coming. Overall it was still a good harvest. But ideally they would need to find a way to make these things give XP again. After all, the key out of this place could be in their next skill. Unlikely but not impossible. They didn't have many other things that could work, so they needed to keep up that hope. What keywords did I get then? Is it time for another triple fusion? As she tried to access her available skills, a few new messages appeared. New available skills have been altered by your specialization. 100% probability check. Hidden property, specialization alteration probability. When acquiring a new class skill, it has a chance of being altered to better fit your specialization. This chance starts off at 0%, and goes up depending on your use and understanding of the specialized skill. The first activation is guaranteed to result in an altered skill. Your accumulated chance percentage will be reset to 0% after getting an altered skill, and may be viewed from your status. Available active skills. Dispel, dispels. Mist, in a thick mist. Soul, to the Necromancer's life force. Solar, error. Spine, error. Alright, I'm not even allowed to get broken descriptions anymore, I guess. Can that be fixed, Mr. Scribe? She waited a bit but nothing happened. That meant that she wouldn't get anything. Too bad. Usually complaining about broken stuff works. So I've only got a single word to go off of for each. Solar and spine. I see how that could have come from the specialization. One related to the sun and one to skeletons. Could have been two cool skills, but it's weird words instead. Can't see them help us escape from here. Just gotta make the best out of it, I guess. Dispel solar something? No, it sounds too specific. I really don't want to waste the dispel keyword. Solar dispel something already feels like it would be better. Maybe that would be good at dispelling curses or stuff like that. Would solar dispel night make it daytime anytime? Don't have night as a keyword though. And a spell like that would have to cost millions of mana, wouldn't it? That's also something I should be careful with. I can still only barely handle casting Angel's Bolt as it is. So something not too specific in its function that I can never use. Like Lead the Dead used to be. And preferably something that sounds reasonable for my level so I can actually cast it. I'll be better off keeping Dispel for later, while Solar is a word representing something strong, so I could use a power upgrade right now. Solar something something. Sofia tapped her nails on the Midanicid slab floor of the mansion as she was lost in thoughts. I need to be careful with the order of words. I have mist, soul, and spine. I can only start with solar. Solar Soul Mist and Solar Mist Soul both don't inspire me much. Solar Spine Mist? No. Solar Mist Spine? That could work actually. I don't know what a spine of solar mist would be. Maybe something like Heal Undead, where the spine represents a ray coming from the sky and solar mist just means it burns things? So like a spell that burns things with a ray of sunlight? If it ends up being that, it's pretty cool. But it would suck if I also can't use it indoors or at night. What are the choices I didn't think through again? Chapter 78, Spine. Right, so, Solar Mist Spine is a solid option. Next. Solar Soul Spine and Solar Spine Soul are the other possibilities. Weirdly enough, these both feel alright. I get the impression that Solar Soul Spine would give a bonus effect to my spine and Solar Spine Soul a bonus effect to my soul. It's an active skill though, so a bonus I need to maintain with mana. What if Solar Soul Spine helped me resist burns? Could go well with Angel's Bolt. But just Solar Soul might be better for that then? Or not, that sounds like a soul buff again. Makes me realize I didn't consider 2 words skills. So Solar Soul, I just said no. Solar Spine? Could see it. Solar Mist? Sounds weak. And on the other hand, the only new thing is Dispel Spine. That could be an insane skill. If you just make people's spine disappear? Kinda like the skill from my demon form in the trial that made the target's heart disappear? But wouldn't work on what doesn't have a spine. Like the Phagiids. And if the enemy has a healing skill, they won't die from it. So that's another no. So. Final verdict. Either, Solar Mist Spine, Solar Soul Spine, or Solar Spine. I feel like not making a 3-word skill is a waste at this point. I only have so many slots and it feels like that forces the scribe to work harder, seeing how it came up with Graveyard of the Righteous from the broken consecrated mass grip. She pondered over it for a while. She wanted to be sure not to be impulsive like she had been before, causing her to miss out on mass soul grip. She didn't even know how she could have acted like this. A lot of things she questioned her own decision about. It bothered her a lot. So many things she did that she felt were rushed or straight up terrible decisions. She decided to take the Solar Soul Spine and let the scribe do its job. You have acquired the active skill, Soul. You have acquired the active skill, Spine. You have acquired the active skill, Solar. Meanwhile, she reflected on this impulsivity of hers. The list was long. Forgetting to use Identify for the longest while after learning it. Wasting money in the city and on the ship instead of buying useful stuff like more potions or skill scrolls, despite Cooley's advice. Revealing to a level 300 vampire that she could summon blood. Jumping towards the Siren Queen to blast her when she could have jumped a bit off on the side and be safer both from the siren and the explosion of her own attack. Taking the hardest sounding trial choice. Carving out her heart and jumping to her death, trusting an amulet and an old ritual circle from a rotten grimoire. Picking skills without considering all her options. Going out of the safe house to chase after an armor piece without even hunting an animal for Perith to be hosted in. Only after she decided to tunnel out of the pyramid did she feel like she recovered her better judgment. Not that it wasn't her taking decisions before, but she felt like that weird on-edge state she had been in the whole time had resulted in her altering her choices. Maybe some of them would have done the same either way. But maybe not. She wanted to believe that this wasn't it. But that felt more and more likely now that she felt better, and took the time to analyze her past actions. She had really been the victim of a soul parasite. She brought up Blessing of the Deep again. Blessing of the Deep, the Saintess was granted a name. They may see the inhabitants of the deep. LV.1, the Saintess and their summons are immune to the mind control, hypnosis, confusion, insanity, domination, soul parasite and instant death status effects. Next function unlocks at skill level 200. She had passed out, and had a weird hallucination. She thought now that it probably wasn't a hallucination at all. I saw an inhabitant of the deep. That's what happened? Right? That thing? It conveyed one message. Freedom. And then the blessing was changed. It updated to grant me freedom. That's consistent with all other immunities. Mind control, hypnosis, death. All things that take away your freedom. The purpose of the deep is freedom? Or its blessing at least? Yes and no. Freedom is my purpose. All the deep did was giving me the blessing I wanted. This all makes so much sense now. So I had a soul parasite. The idea was frightening. And that removed it. But I didn't see a system message from it. Well, I'm pretty sure now, this is what happened. I've felt so much better ever since. Alright. I don't know many things about the world. But this I know for sure. The deep is an ally. Now she only had one question left about this ordeal. Why? And when? How did she even end up with something so otherworldly sounding like a soul parasite in the first place? Souls. Spiritual plane. Aleth? No. I'm dumb for even considering it. And it started before that. She had first felt this strange sensation at the church, that she was certain of. The high priest on the first day? Not this either, I got the blessing afterwards. They would have known and removed it then if now they feel like it's worth removing. So sometimes during my stay at the church, after getting the blessing. I can't really deduce more now. Maybe after I learn more about these parasites. And I will. As long as it wasn't the magisterium. Whoever did this shit to me is going to pay for it. Even if it was him actually. I'll go and fetch his bones for Perith if I have to. Who was it? The priests? The oracle? Their god? Wait for me, Scarage Church. I will be back. That was all a plan that could only work if she wasn't trapped in Zangdar forever. Now she held additional hope. Maybe the deep would come once again to offer her freedom? They hadn't broken her out of the church so she doubted it. But one could dream. And right as she finished her train of thought, as if the scribe had been waiting for her to be done, the solar soul spine line in her status changed. Spine of the Black Sun, invokes the weapon Spine of the Black Sun. The spine is a blunt segmented longsword that may also be used as an extendable whip. Deals low physical damage. Upon hitting an enemy with the spine, creates a solar burst, damaging all enemies in a 1.02 m, 1 plus skill level /50, diameter sphere around the point of impact. The burst's power scales with the skill level and the strength of the hit. Recover health equal to 0.1%, skill level /10, of the damage dealt by the explosion. The spine will disappear if it leaves your hands. Requires a 3 seconds channeling to deploy. Costs 100 mana per second to maintain. Yet another mana intensive spell. She activated the skill. Over the next 3 seconds, her mana spread out and materialized the spine of the Black Sunday. The weapon was a spine. Yep. Good old human-looking vertebral column. In actual fact, to call it human-looking was a bit of a stretch, but it had the same general shape. The part that was essentially the ass of the spine, which Sofia didn't know the name of, was in her hand. It was carved out to be like a proper handle. It was strangely straight for a spine. Anyone with that in their back would have a weird posture. She counted 44 vertebrae, which was actually a lot more than humans had. A thin filament of holy light linked all the hollow vertebrae from the inside. The neck part was the point of the spine sword, and was actually tapered into a point, unlike a real spine. The spine was quite light, and around 150 centimeters long. It was a sword in name and general shape only. Much more bone than sword. No edge, no sharpness. Only a few broken bits of ribs on the sides. Maybe the point could still be used for stabbing, she had managed to prick her finger with it at least. She swung the thing around in the air. Of course she had absolutely no training in the use of a sword. It was quite underwhelming. Can I cast Angel's Bolt while holding it? The answer was no. Not with the same hand at least, the other worked just fine. How about the whip form then? It took a bit of fiddling around before she understood how she needed to shift the way her mana supplied the sword to change its form. As she finally activated the whip form, the straight sword slumped and sagged, tip touching the ground. The vertebrae weren't touching each other at all anymore, only linked by the now much brighter holy light current coursing inside. How long is that thing? Sofia knew what a whip was, but she had never actually seen one, let alone how to use it. After hitting herself a few times with it, she finally managed to attack forward. She didn't expect it to touch the wall 5 meters away, but it did, the filament of light extending and each vertebrae getting further and further away from each other. It rebounded against the mansion wall, producing the crisp sound of a bone hitting a hard surface and not much else. The wall and the weapon were both intact. Didn't lie about the low physical damage. I think it can still go further. Getting a good swing with it wasn't all that easy. Trying again and again, the furthest she managed to hit the wall from was about 10 meters. Can an actual whip hit that far? Waiting for Alith to come back, she continued her testing. Chapter 79, Prepare for Trouble. Sofia thought her new skill was good. With that she finally had both a real weapon, and a ranged attack she could use without burning half to death. But there were a few problematic details. First was the high mana consumption, which, used together with Graveyard of the Righteous, meant she could only fight for 3 minutes in a row at most before being out. And that was without using any other skill than these two. Then, she also was a total beginner with both swords and whips. And last but not least, she had no idea about the damage it actually did. Hitting herself with it only resulted in the loss of 5 to 10 health points and a few scratches. With her armor on, it did nothing. Presumably most of the actual damage would come from the solar burst part, but that only happened when hitting an enemy, so she couldn't try it. At least it sounds like it cannot hit my allies nor myself. Finally some good fucking magic. And the self-healing part was icing on the cake. Her biggest conundrum now was whether to use her last skill level boost point to fast forward it to level 100 or not. Even if she did, she still wouldn't know how to use it well, but she had managed to hit the wall a few times, so perhaps it would still be useful. And since the damage scaled with the level, if it stayed at level 1 it was pretty useless. On the other hand, maybe the skill she would make at level 120 would be better. Perhaps even one that could help her escape from there. But she had no way of knowing that before being there. And considering the dwindling XP from making the Phagiids fall to their death, those that were left probably wouldn't be enough to get her there. So the level 120 would be far away. Now if she fought these remaining monsters using this weapon, they would probably start giving crazy amounts of XP again. She decided to wait for Alith's opinion. Sofia couldn't sense her location like she could with Perith, but she hadn't been too worried since she could still monitor Alith's status page. That was part of the Saintess perks. With sensing heroes and their level. Name, Alith level, 112. Health, 4210/4210, 10 asterisk level, 500 flat, pills, 2500 filter 2. Stamina, 11,250/14,906, 20 asterisk level, 166 flat, pills, 10,000 toned, 2,500 filter 2. Mana, 10,000/10,000. She had discovered she could also add notes to the lines, so she added a breakdown of the stats. It was mind-boggling how the system had so many hidden functions no one ever talked about. How many are only possible thanks to the scribe, I wonder? Like the available classless skill research. The more she found out about the system, the less it made sense. For example, why could she send more mana to Graveyard of the Righteous to have the skeletons regenerate faster, but not do the same to have a stronger Angel's Bolt? Not that I could survive it being stronger, but it's weird that it isn't an option. She also wanted to experience more with casting skills without the system, but that was a tall order. It seemed impossible to do it without extensively using the system version before, and it would still end up weaker, if more flexible. Still, it was good for saving skill slots. I should have trained a bit more with Lead the Dead before forgetting it, might have been able to cast it without the system. All you needed to do was reproduce the mana usage that the system forced your body to accomplish, but without any help. Easier said than done. The only skills she had managed this with were still Identify and Angel's Bolt. Skills? Spells? Sofia had always been using the two words interchangeably, but the Midanisit Catalyst precised spells while the system usually used skills. Is that the difference? A skill when you use the system, a spell when you don't? Maybe it wasn't that at all, but she decided that this would be how she would differentiate the two from now on. It felt like something was missing. Sofia scrolled all the way back up to the messages about her trial rewards. Completed hidden tasks, successfully use wild magic, cheat death, defeat Ascension 3 filters up in singular battle, survive a certain death encounter. That's it. Spells are system-less skills. Pretty sure this is what that meant now. She used both the spell and then the skill version of Identify on her newly acquired summoned weapon. There was a stark difference in result that said a lot about how much better a system-assisted skill was. Spine of the Black Sun, an invoked mana weapon, it contains a mix of holy and undead properties. The wielder regains some life when hitting their enemies with it. Spine of the Black Sun, a versatile mana weapon in the shape of a vertebral column. Do not be fooled by the holy bursts of light, its true nature is that of a hungry predator. Reaching through the plains, it gnaws at the soul and life essence of its victims to feed its wielder. Item level, 1 grade, flawless. Lovely. Nice toy. Holy. Can you? Alith was already near her, pressing a golden sphere the size of a head against Sofia's chest, and her other hand against her mouth. Get that in the pendant quick, we need to go down the hole, she pressed while peeking through the windows behind. Ah shit! Full of sand. Sofia did her best to shake the sand out of the pendant as fast as possible. The sphere barely fit in there. Once it disappeared, she grabbed Alith and flew back down the hole. She left Parith behind to hide in a corner, so she could have a view on what happened up there. Should have done that from the start. Hiding below the city and above the void once again, she asked Alith what was going on. So, what happened? Actually, it's not two of them that came out, it's all of them. Found myself in a tough spot at one point, but I still managed to go unnoticed somehow. So the big spheres up in there were unguarded. Sliced through one to see what's inside, and there you have it. Okay, and why are we hiding down there again? The second I took this thing out of the manor, the squids all turned toward me. Managed to distract them for a bit with my new skill, but I don't doubt they're still after me. That thing you stole was brimming with mana, and since they react to mana so much, putting it in the pendant was a good call. Can't feel it from there. Right? Actually, can you take it out again? No way they'll feel it with 10 meters of the blue stuff in between, since they already couldn't when I was still in the mansion. Maybe throw a quick Identify and store it again, to be safe. The golden sphere flickered in and out of existence in Sofia's hand that wasn't busy holding Alith. Golden Power Core, a power core for stabilizing and redistributing large quantities of mana. Item level, 200. Grade, Precious. Look at the description. It's pretty obvious this is for maintaining the palace's shield. But it doesn't generate mana despite the name. I'm curious what the power source is. Alith pondered about it. Can't it take it from the air around us? That's how most of our regeneration works too, no. Well, actually, I'm only noticing now, but I think the ambient mana in the city is a bit less than it was before. So maybe it's that. Or I'm imagining things. You mean we might run out? That's bad news. At the rate it's going. Only if we're still here in a few decades it might run out, I would say. On the bright side, that means if we survive that long the shield should go down, Sofia guessed. Yeah, no, I'm not waiting that long to get in there, will be voiding the other cores, don't care about the money they'd sell for. I want to be out of here as much as you. Right. What about this new skill of yours by the way, any good? Alitha's eyes moved around looking at nothing for a second, she was looking through her status but Sofia couldn't see it. There you go, kind of like this one, for once. Lady Double, even a proper lady has times when she needs some personal space. But maintaining a proper front is paramount. This will help reconcile both notions. Creates a mirage, double, of your presence where you stand, teleporting yourself up to 11.2, skill level /10, meters away and granting 0.3 seconds invisibility. The double has 1000 health points and loses 1 health point per second. The double may either stand in place and politely nod to an ongoing conversation, or either run or walk in a chosen direction. The chosen action cannot be altered after casting. Activate again to seamlessly exchange positions with the double, once per cast. Costs 1000 mana per use. Costs 1000 mana to exchange positions. Cannot create more than one double at once. Sofia nodded as she read through the skill. Not incredible. To escape a chase it's perfect. And for some other situations too. Not exactly the most groundbreaking for someone who can already turn into a ghost. I can still see it being useful. Especially here where she can't transform. Alright. Should I fly back up the other hole? Did things calm down, up there? Can Perith see? He was hiding in a corner until now. Let's see. Chapter 80, Out of Bounds. In the beginning, when Sofia first used her ability to look through Perith's eyes, she had needed to close her own to not be disturbed by the double vision. By now it was already something she was used to, though it was still distracting. Flying in place under the city with the top of her head against the blue bricks, she took control of Perith. I'm moving Perith carefully but I think the mansion's still safe. Doesn't look like they followed inside. Check through the windows, just in case. No, don't see them nearby, maybe they returned to their own mansions? Let's go back up. They reunited with the chicken skeleton. It had been clear for a while that if a way out of this city existed, it was in the palace. Now, they could probably take down this shield in a few hours by stealing all the remaining cores and throwing them to the void. Or just flat out destroying them, though that could be dangerous, as they were still full of mana. But that meant the Phagiids would get access to the palace too, potentially damaging, or consuming, what was inside. So they had to get rid of them first anyway. If they settled back down in their mansions then there was always the strategy of the holes. It had worked twice, surely it would keep working. If not then they could only fight them. Time flew by. The big squids had indeed returned home to perch on their spheres. Except for the one Phagiid whose power core was nabbed by Alith, it had relocated to another already occupied mansion, so that was their next digging target. Sofia decided not to use the skill level boost for now, and she kept training Summon Blood. Another thing she had started working on was teaching Alith the spell version of Identify. She had expected it to take forever but Alith had actually been very quick on the uptake, managing it after only a few days of personal guidance. Or could be that I'm a genius teacher. Not sure how long that took actually. Time is hard to measure without the sun. They were starting to get very good at digging with the mithril blades. They had even been offered the classless skill excavation, which they both ignored. I swear, next time we're buying a mithril pickaxe and shovel. Soon this mansion too fell in the great void, and without making a ruckus this time. You have defeated Phagiid larvae, leave 232. You have defeated Phagiid larvae, leave 239. Way of the Fool grants slight bonus experience. You gained a level. *1. To say that the result was underwhelming was an understatement. By now it was clear how harsh the diminishing returns of killing without taking risks were. No wonder it took us so long to reach 99 the last time, I'm surprised we even managed to do it at all. It would have probably taken a fifth of the time if only we hunted the lesser Phagiids in actual battles back then. Still, that was one fewer power core, and two fewer dangerous monsters on the map. There were 8 mansions left with a power core and a Phagiid larvae inside each. They were already working on the next one when Sofia noticed something going on with the palace's shield. It was wavering. It was a very subtle fluctuation in the monolayer that surrounded the palace, some kind of flickering that happened every so often, once every few minutes. But Sofia had been staring at the palace so much, since it was the only thing that broke the uniformly blue scenery, that she had managed to see it. It didn't take long for her mind to search for a way to exploit that. She brought Alith near the boundaries of the invisible shield. "Try teleporting inside with Lady Double," she told Alith, who looked at her like she had lost her mind. "You all right, Sof? We tried that like 2 days ago or something." No, I know this, just Parith, jump every 5 seconds. So, I noticed the shields disappearing for like a fraction of a second every so often. It's not enough to go through, but if you time your teleportation properly, that has to be because of the missing power cores." "Oh, I see, should have started by saying that. Well, I can't even see the shield, let alone when it's off, so give me a countdown or I'll just be wasting mana." Getting the timing right was no easy task. And Parith jumping on the side was actually more distracting than anything, so they had him stop early on. It had been quite a while, and they were considering going back to digging when Alith actually pulled it off. She appeared on the other side, leaving a motionless image of herself behind. Smirking, Alith gave Sofia a thumbs up. Now for part 2 of the plan, Alith took Parith out of the storage pendant. The power core that Alith stole was actually in their house. The Phagiids didn't notice when they took it out. It was likely that the huge walls separating the inner and outer city acted as enough insulation. That or their mana detection had a terrible range. Storing Parith in the pendant was something they had never done, because he was always too big and could go in the bone armor's storage instead. Now that he was a chicken though, he fit right in. Right now the link to Parith wasn't working, even out of the pendant, the shield blocked it. She couldn't use his senses or send any order. Weren't we soul linked? I get that it doesn't work when he's stored, but even a mana shield blocks it. That's kinda sad but also good to know. At least it wasn't useless that Parith was on the other side, he could still help Alith fight whatever was inside. They had convened on a signal for Alith to give Parith to order him to teleport back to Sofia. It probably wouldn't work unless it was during the shield malfunction, but at least that was something. Alith entered the palace through the main door. It was unlocked. Sofia could see hints of a hall inside. She nodded to Alith as she entered. With nothing else to do but wait, she sat on the ground. She couldn't even check Alith or Parith's health, which was worrying. If they died, she wouldn't even get to know until the next time the shield malfunctioned. She didn't have to wait for long, as the next time the shield flickered for an instant, Parith appeared on her lap. He was holding a weird flat rectangle of middenissite inlaid with gold in his beak. It looked like some kind of playing card. "Why would she send me this?" She identified the thing. "Matrix Shield Key Card. Through the shield, the card shall give access. Has never been used. Item level, 0 grade, forgotten. I can enter too. Also, wait, isn't this a recycled version of the keyring's description?" Sofia stood up. Parith jumped on her shoulder. Holding the key card, she approached the shield. But she stopped before touching it. "Wait, do I need to activate it first somehow?" She remembered how she needed some blood to activate the vampire's membership card. But the people here weren't vampires, I don't think. Let's push some mana in there. Sending mana in the crystal part did nothing, which in retrospect was logical since the material couldn't hold mana. When she sent it to the golden filaments instead, the card started glowing. Yep, that was absolutely needed. This time she tried crossing the shield for real. It worked. It felt like nothing special, as if the shield wasn't there in the first place. Sofia activated her bone armor as she walked through. You have entered the dungeon, Zangdar Castle, LV. Okay. What's up with the question marks? Alith came back from inside, you waiting for the sun to set. Rolling her eyes, Sofia jogged to the entrance. The inside was nothing like the drab blue city outside. Every wall was decorated, the ice blue stone was finely sculpted, there were paintings up for display, columns supporting the ceiling. This was some kind of large entry hall. It looked built and furnished to impress guests. I checked the side room first, it looked like a guard station, the card was in there. Identify's a really useful spell to have, although it doesn't say much about most things, but at least it told me enough about the keys, Alith explained. Alright. How do we explore this? The castle seems big. Almost like half the Holy See. You send Perith first and we follow if it's safe. I meant where do we go, but sure. Oh. Let's just go straight forward? I don't know much about castles but there should be a main hall with a throne room or something, no? Nobles love that kind of display. And I guess our best bet to find another ring would be a treasury or something. There wasn't one in the guard's room. Straightforward it is then. Opening the double doors at the end of the hall just enough for Perith to go through, Sofia sent him in. You were 100% correct about the throne room. Well, it's more like a banquet hall with a big seat of honor, looks safe. Told ye. Alith strolled into the main hall first. But she was actually still near Sofia, it was the double that had walked in. Nothing untoward happened to it either. Reassured there wasn't a trap, they entered for real this time.